My name is Paul Gavin, and this is Teach Your Drummer. I want to help you, the band director, be a more effective educator for your jazz drummer in your jazz band class. So this person asks, I don't have a jazz drum set player, but I do have percussionists in my program. What are the first steps in creating a drum set player? The first thing to consider is the person that you're thinking about. You want to choose someone who's going to commit to the program and who has pretty good time and is interested in being the drum set player for the band. They've got to know that they're about to make a big commitment to the band. It's going to be very important that they do the work that's necessary to be successful, because that's going to have a very big bearing on whether or not the band is successful. The next thing you want to think about is how you're going to facilitate their practicing. So if they're not already a drum set player, they probably don't have a drum set. I think something band programs should think about, you know how you have the tubas and you have trombones and you have French horns and oboes, because you need those instruments to be in your ensemble, but sometimes they're hard to get people to buy. Why don't we have any drum sets for students to rent? I think every program should have 2 drum sets. So the drum set you use for your performances and everything like that, and an additional drum set that you can rent just like you rent your tubas and your other important instruments. And then that way, when the situation comes up where you have students that don't have what they need in order to play drums in your class, well, now they're set. In the event that that doesn't work out, of course you want to think about letting them practice after school. Whatever you can do to make it possible so that they can develop their musicianship and get the practice in, that's the next thing that you want to think about. You also want to suggest a private instructor, and if the student is not in a position where they can afford private lessons, then I would suggest the program pays for maybe 4 or 5 private lessons itself to help that student develop. As far as what teacher, you want to find someone who actually plays jazz, preferably for a living, so they really know how jazz works, especially jazz drums. And you also want someone who's actually an educator. Sometimes it's hard to find someone who is really both of those things, but you really need to find that, especially when you're establishing a baseline for a brand new musician in drum set playing. They're going to need some recordings that are going to be inspirational. It's not going to take long before they figure out, oh, playing drum set is actually really hard. So when that comes up, it's really helpful to have recordings that remind you why you were interested in doing this in the first place, and that inspire you and motivate you to keep working, even though the working has finally become difficult. An album that I strongly recommend is called 11, and it's an album by the Birdland Big Band, which is directed by Tommy Igoe, who's a drum set player who wrote the book for the Broadway show Lion King and leads 2 bands on 2 different coasts, in New York City and in San Francisco. Both of those bands are incredible. If you can, a really good way to make this special for the student would be for you to buy that album and then hand it to the student and let them know it's a gift from you and that you're thankful that they're about to take on this challenge of becoming the drum set player for the program. Next, you should give them a lesson in the basic swing pattern, which is just being able to go ding, ding, da-ding, ding, da-ding on the ride cymbal and getting a good 2 and 4 on the hi-hat. You should be able to teach that lesson to any student. Lastly, and I feel like I'm going to say this a ton in this series, encourage curiosity in this student. If you decide to give them recordings, then you want to know those recordings really well so you can have a dialogue with them about those recordings. Ask them a lot of questions. Ask them as much as you can. Pull some information out of them. Make them think. And then that always encourages the curiosity of the student, because they know you might ask them more questions and they want to have answers. And it's going to cause them to learn and learn and learn and become more curious. Also in class, ask them a lot of questions. Put them on the spot. Keep them on their toes. Make sure that they're paying attention and avoid giving them the answers. Make them give you the answers. You ask the questions. The more questions you ask, the more you're going to encourage curiosity in the student. So best of luck to you in starting off percussionists as drum set players. This is going to be an adventure for you, but you're going to become a much better educator for it. You ask the questions and I will answer them. I'm Paul Gavin, and this is Teach Your Drummer.